What was your "oh shit, this person is a psychopath" moment when meeting people? Number 1, went on a date once, and she casually dropped how she killed her brother's hamster with perfume as a kid because she was mad at him, like it was just a quirky little story to laugh about. Needless to say, I started looking for an exit strategy at that point. Number 2, I've been a public school teacher for a decade. I've only ever been scared of one student. First of all, this was in my first few years of teaching. This student was of myth in my school. I taught at an alternative school for students that had been expelled from every other school. But overall, my students were chill. They weren't good students, but if you met them at their level, things were usually fine. The exception was JT. JT was a sophomore when I met him. But at that point, I didn't teach him, but boy did I hear about him. Somehow his mom was able to game the paperwork and education system enough that this kid was unpunishable. Everything was technically covered under a litany of 504 plans and IEP paperwork. So much so that this kid literally pushed an 8-month pregnant teacher down, and he was back 2 weeks later. He could literally punch a kid in the mouth and be back 2 days later. And because of this, he was just a massive problem. The first terrifying discovery for me was that his mom was very vocal about not wanting him home because she was scared of him. She had a good reason to be. JT, as a small child, tried to murder his family by lighting their house on fire, specifically trying to murder his brother by duct taping him to his bed while he slept. His brother survived but had horrific burns, but somehow that didn't stop him from supporting his almost murderous brother. JT was ruthless, but he was also about 5'4", and his Krugered brother was about 6 foot and much physically stronger. I finally had the pleasure of teaching JT in his senior year. He had approximately 10 credits, all gym-based, and was nowhere near graduation. My first note was that this is the only kid I've ever met that just had nothing going on behind his eyes. He was shark-like. He never smiled or laughed unless someone got hurt. Cruel for cruelty's sake. One day, JT wasn't there, which frankly was odd. He had a great drug business going at school, and he only had to avoid one cop. The next day, we found out why he wasn't there. JT murdered a kid, shot him in the face for $12 and a little bit of weed. His lawyer tried to get his sentence lowered by arguing that it was technically his first offense since everything else happened when he was a kid. He got 25 to life. Number 3. I am a kindergarten teacher and have been for years. I have had the one kid, nothing behind the eyes, truly takes pleasure in seeing people hurt. He was like a cancer in this classroom. He loved nothing more than to create scenarios in which he could witness other kids having their feeling hurt. Several times a week, he'd have a student crying in hysterics. He loved getting children to turn on each other. He'd lie to one kid about something another kid did. And he loved to see kids left out and feel sad and alone. It's like he literally fed off their anxiety. His parents were also super bizarre. They adopted like 6 kids of various genders and races, but all the kids were the same age. Then the mom would make reference to them being twins when they very obviously were not. I told my teacher partner that if I had to guess one child in my history of teaching that would end up on TV for a violent crime, it would definitely be this child. I forgot to mention that at our class Christmas party, he threw a full cup of scalding hot cocoa at my teaching partner's chest. It splattered and burned the surrounding children and gave my teaching partner a very bad burn. When I asked him what he was thinking, he said, "I was done with it. I hope he doesn't end up murdering someone someday, but I could totally see it. No emotion, no empathy, no conscience." Number 4. It was an Uber driver. My wife and I took an Uber down to the bars one weekend. Once he picked us up, I could easily tell he was on something. While we were crossing a bridge on the interstate, about halfway to our destination, he says, "Isn't it crazy that I could swerve off the road and kill us all right now?" I told him to get off on the next exit and canceled the ride. I also reported him to Uber, so hopefully nobody has to get in a car with that lunatic again. Number 5. Was walking my dog down a main road on lead. A lady was walking her dog off lead. Her dog stopped in the road, causing cars to stop. She had no control of it. Her dog lunged for my dog. I asked her to put her dog on a lead. She said she will stamp on my dog's head and let her dog kill mine. I knew it wasn't even worth arguing with crazy, so I carried on my walk. She then set her house on fire 2 weeks later with her children inside. Luckily they were okay, but yeah, madness. Number 6 was walking my dog down a main road on lead. A lady was walking her dog off lead. Her dog stopped in the road, causing cars to stop. She had no control of it. Her dog lunged for my dog. I asked her to put her dog on a lead. She said she will stamp on my dog's head and let her dog kill mine. I knew it wasn't even worth arguing with crazy, so I carried on my walk. She then set her house on fire 2 weeks later with her children inside. Luckily they were okay, but yeah, madness. Number 7. At a party in high school, or just after it, we were doing late-night juvenile things like Truth or Dare. I knew most people there pretty well, except the new boyfriend of my friend's sister. I'm not entirely certain how it came up, but he admitted to the entire group that he had sexually assaulted a dog. We were drunk and high, but everyone sobered up with that. We were too young to know what to do with that information, but we all just shut up and quickly left the party. She broke up with him not long after. I can't imagine doing something that awful to a helpless animal, but admitting it to a group of strangers seemed downright sociopathic. I was glad to never see his face again. Number 8. This story makes me angry. So one time a friend came over and brought a new friend with them. Seemed like a nice guy. He was quiet and kept to himself. I was a young single woman and far too trusting of people at the time, I think. So my friend mentions that this guy has just recently got out of prison. I ask him what he went away for. He then proceeds to tell me that he and his friends had followed a young girl into a local park and raped her using various sharp objects they found on the ground. They each got extremely long sentences. His happened to be 12 years. What made everything worse was that he ends the story with the fact that she killed herself because she couldn't live with what they did to her. Needless to say, he was never allowed around my home again, and I had a very stern talk with my so-called friend. Just to clarify, the guy friend, I got rid of him quick sticks, but I felt unsafe and had to do so over a short time period. The fact that he had associated with such scum and that I was a young lady living alone at the time was the reason he only got a stern talking to. Number 9. After moving to a new city a few years ago, my best friend came to visit. We're both 30-something dudes. We were out at a bar when a guy asked to sit with us because there weren't any free tables outside. Fine. Being polite, we start talking to the guy. He told us he was a truck driver just stopping overnight in town, and at some point mentioned he was ex-military. From there, things began to get strange, but slowly, like the proverbial frog in water being brought to a boil. Not only was he in the military, but he had a brother, it might have been a twin, I can't recall, who was in the CIA, embedded in Russia. My friend and I also gradually got the sense that this guy was a little too interested in us. We eventually closed our tabs and decided to go to a different bar, but the guy stuck with us, telling increasingly tall tales about his time in the military. He eventually confessed that there was no brother. He was the spy who'd been embedded in Russia. What struck me was how, even though his stories got more and more ridiculous, his demeanor was deadly serious, if a bit overwrought, and the intensity was starting to make my skin crawl. Not only that, but he was starting to pick fights with other people at the bar, deliberately being belligerent. Over time, he started to radiate this menacing air that hadn't been apparent when we first started talking to him. He didn't get angry directly at us, but it was like he was demonstrating how scary he could be and suggesting we stay on his good side. Finally, he took me aside and slipped into a not very convincing Russian accent. Alas, he was never a spy for the US. He was a double agent, a one-man Russian sleeper cell. But he couldn't bear lying to me. He had to come clean. Even though we had open tabs at the bar, my friend and I waited until the guy went to the bathroom, abandoned our cards, and dipped post-haste. Number 10. I-20F was dating this dude, 23-eem, for a few months, and we were getting on really well. Then we both ended up having to move for our jobs at around the same time. He wants to try long distance, so we do. We call most days and watch movies together in our off time. The time zones mess it up a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. Out of the blue, one day he just says he doesn't want to be together. I'm like, wow, okay. A little blindsided, but sure. So I start just going about normal life again and hanging out with friends, the normal post-relationship stuff. After about a month, he begs, like absolutely begs to get back together. Movie-type stuff, sending flowers to me at work, sending handwritten cards almost daily across thousands of miles, and even bought me a ticket to fly out to see him. So I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll go and see what he has to say. Worst case scenario, I just fly home. So I got a ticket for 2 days after because I just figured I could head out if he was being a dick. He picks me up from the airport and is basically how he used to be, just telling me he missed me and he regretted it as soon as it happened, and it was the biggest mistake of his life. The usual. So we stay with his family because he's like, oh, please don't get a hotel. I already feel bad enough about the whole month. Just stay with us. And I just thought, hey, free room, I guess. Everything is completely fine for the first few days, and then I get this alert on my phone, and it's a hurricane warning and saying they're pushing my flight for 4 days later. I'm like, crap, I need to get back to work. I only took like 3 days. When he gets back to the house from work, I tell him about it, and he's like, oh, I know, we already started boarding up the windows. I was a little freaked out, but not too much because I guess that's normal for big hurricanes. So the next morning, he shakes me and wakes me up and tells me to come to the living room. I was like, okay. When I do, it's him, his 2 brothers, his sister, his mom, and his dad, people I have only met on this one instance. And he has a binder. They sit me down and each of them reads a passage from the binder of why we shouldn't be together and why I need to move on. And he breaks up with me in his parents' house, in front of his siblings, in the middle of a hurricane power outage. Then, because of the hurricane, I was stuck there for 4 more days with these freaks. Probably not the most psychopath person I've met, but this story is still just so strange to me. I had to post it. Number 11. At a party once I met a friend of a friend who worked as a nurse at a local hospital. She was of the sort who would sigh heavily and use the unique stresses of her job to bring her the attention she was looking for. She took the spotlight with pleasure and started talking about how hard her job was. When I asked if there were things she liked about her job, she beamed and explained that she worked primarily in maternity. However, her anecdotes had nothing to do with mothers or infants. She spoke primarily of how wonderful it was to be in charge of these women's lives. She explained how fragile they were in those moments, and how even after delivery, she was the only one on the floor for hours who would be able to forecast if there was going to be life-changing complications. She absolutely glowed as she explained how these people's lives were in her hands. The conversation steered in other directions amongst partygoers, but she reclaimed it on the topic of high school experiences. She shared an anecdote on how she was rejected for an advanced choir position and blamed it solely on the poor judgment of the instructor. Years later, she got to sing at the instructor's funeral. I'll never forget the pride she took in having control over other people's lives. It struck me as the most basic display of evil. Number 12. My ex-boyfriend. He was already abusive and an alcoholic and very toxic, so nothing should have surprised me. But one night we were hanging out and just watching a movie and laughing about something. He went kinda quiet and looked like he was thinking about something. He turns to me and with a smirk goes, "You know I could just kill you if I wanted to? There's just something about you. I sometimes just want to kill you. I wonder how I would do it." I broke up with him a few weeks later after I figured out a way to leave without him following me or attacking me. Creepy stuff. Number 13. My ex-fiancé told me that if I were to get pregnant with a girl before a boy, he would push me down the stairs and make me miscarry so we could have a boy first, as many times as it took. We broke up, and afterwards he convinced me to talk things over with him. I got into his car and he proceeded to calmly explain to me that it didn't matter if I took him back or not, as he headed to the expressway. I asked him where we were going, and he remained absolutely silent. He started gaining speed, but the pitch in his voice never changed when he finally spoke and began a diatribe about our love and how we would be together forever, no matter how many people wanted to pull us apart, and no matter if I saw it yet or not. I again asked him where we were going, and he said a neighboring state where no one would know or find us, with a very creepy smile. One that lives in my mind to this day, but I can't recreate. All very calm. I had to call my mother and she had to talk him down, beg him to bring me back home. Added bonus, when I was back home and refused to see him, he stood outside my family home through all hours of the night and started singing songs to me over the phone about how he was going to burn my house down and kill everyone inside if I wouldn't go outside and talk to him. Number 14. She came late to our date, immediately ordered a drink and burger, then told me she was late because of a family thing. Before the burger arrived, she mentioned she'd have to cut our date short because she was having a family dinner. I was like, okay, all good. Then she told me that the craziest thing had happened where her sister met a dude on Tinder and they ended up going to a family barbecue and it ended up with them getting married. Before her burger even arrived, she said, "Wouldn't it be funny to pull a prank on my family? Like, you and me went to my family barbecue and let everyone assume we were really hitting it off and they'd totally think we were going to get married." I'll admit I'm also the psychopath in this story because I went, "Good mashed potatoes." She spent all night introducing me as her future fiance, and I had to take a Tinder break after that. Number 15. I, through a buddy, met this dude we all called Ranger Dave. He was a 100% ex-Army Ranger with multiple deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, multiple heroic medals, appeared all-round nice kind of guy. I knew him tertiarily on and off. I'd see him driving by or bump into him in the grocery store, coffee shop, etc. He lived in town and, for all outward appearances and actions, was normal. One day, walking home from lab, he pulled up to me and offered me a ride home. He knew where I lived and had been there a few times for pre-games or hangouts, whatever. I said sure, hopped in. Ranger Dave and I pulled up to an uncontrolled intersection. A four-way intersection without stop signs on any side. More of a whoever gets there goes kind of thing. Really easy to navigate, not hard to see every direction. Well, for whatever reason, Ranger Dave lost his shit. The poor person who had just pulled up to the intersection before us started to go again, as they should have, no issues at all. Fucking Ranger Dave floored it. Full throttle Dodge Ram, 8 fucking cylinders, smashed the shit out of a Toyota Prius, easily 45 in less than a second, full T-bone smasheroo. He flipped the fuck out, screaming veiny neck monster. I hit my head on the windshield, split my forehead open. Remember, I had just gotten in the truck. No time to put on a seatbelt. I, concussed, noped the fuck out of that scene after making sure fuckwad didn't maim or kill the little old lady that had no idea what had just happened. I gave her my info, told her that I had just hopped into his truck seconds before for a quick ride home, then called the police. He fucking left. Drove the fuck off. I kept seeing him around. Fuck Ranger Dave. Number 16. I was causally dating a guy for roughly 5 months. I moved into a new apartment and had sent him pictures of the interior before I moved. He went on a trip to Scotland and got upset that I wasn't answering his FaceTimes in the middle of the night. I decided I wasn't interested in pursuing anything further because of his persistent pestering and insecurities. I had moved in and was working on unpacking when suddenly I got a knock at my door. He found where I was living with just a picture of the hardwood floors and some windows. I don't have my location for my photos turned on, so there's no way he could have found it from something simple. He saw absolutely nothing creepy about it and proceeded to push the door and beg me to let him inside. I promptly shut and locked the door, then made sure he heard my shotgun cock. He left and I haven't heard from him, thankfully. Number 17. One day I was driving home from work around 3 in the afternoon, bright sunny day. I see a man hitchhiking from the one town that is south of my town, so I figure I'll pull over, give the guy a ride. So he jumps in, he's got a knapsack on, throws it in the back, thanks me so much, and off we go. So we're chatting, and he tells me he's trying to hitchhike about a 7-hour drive north of where we are right now. I tell him I can take him about 45 minutes north. All's good. Start asking why he's going there, and he says, oh yeah, he wants to go camping up that way. He's got to retrieve something. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Okay, what are you going for? He goes, well, the police are after me, and they have been trying to find me for quite a while, but I just keep changing bodies, and that way they can't find me. So I've left a body up near this town, and I'm going to switch into it, and then once I do so I can hitchhike across the country safely. This guy did not change his voice, change his look. He didn't all of a sudden go, Mr. Super Creepy. It's not like he was trying to fake me out. He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. So now we are out in the middle of the countryside. I have to keep going until we get to my town before I can get this guy out of my car. Normally, I would have driven through town and let him go on the other side, but I pulled in right downtown, said, sorry, I've got to go into this store, you'll have to jump out here. And I went into the store and waited for him to walk away. Fortunately, he didn't kill me and take my body. Or did he? Number 18. I walk my dog at the same time daily. You tend to bump into the same people, routines and all that. See a woman with a Bernese mountain dog on a rope lead. I've not seen her before, and this dog is at least twice her size, so I'm a bit cautious about opening the gate to the park. Assure myself it's fine, she can control it, and I'm just being needlessly anxious. As I open the gate and go through with my Jack Russell, I watch as the mountain dog bolts towards us, barking. The woman holding him gets pulled off her feet and lands on her shoulder hard with a loud groan. Quickly scoop my dog and go back through the gate, slamming it shut behind me as I can hear this woman yelling over, it's okay, he's friendly. He just wants to say hello. As this big bastard is jumping up at the gate, barking and snarling. As I back away from the gate, she yells up from the ground, I'm a fucking pussy. Don't be such a pussy, say hello. He just wants to play with your dog. Such a surreal turn of events. I have no idea what the hell was going on with her or that hellhound, but decided to walk quickly home with my dog and leave her on the ground with the snarling hound at the gate. This was about 3 years ago now, but I still wonder what the heck this woman's plan was, and did she just want me to get attacked or my dog attacked? Number 19. A few months back, I ended things with a close friend. We had known each other since sophomore year of high school, so we practically grew up together. A little while into our friendship, he was very dependent on relationships, and when they would end, he'd spiral really badly. One relationship in particular made him absolutely crumble. I would help through the grief process, but it became intense and his need for comfort became suffocating that even his own mother would call me to comfort her son. And if I had no time or just wasn't comforting enough, he would lash out and yell. Even called me once to show me how he ripped and stabbed his ex's belongings that were left at his house. At that moment, I began to see his true colors. One day we were talking and I had brought up a past argument that I thought was funny. He got mad and lashed out saying, well, I didn't know it would hurt your feelings. It took me aback, and just something clicked in me that I couldn't have a person like that in my life. Months passed and I'm approached by a friend who is friends with him. She ends up telling me that he has a police report and has been reported to his college for spreading CP of his ex. It was a shock because I had no idea he had dated a minor. That's when I realized, oh shit, he's a psychopath. Number 20. My best friend's sister had recently met a new man. She was the kind of woman who had terrible taste in men. She had left a relationship with a wonderful man whom she her first child with. They separated right when she gave birth. She met this man when her son was 6 months old. I was very close with this family. They all went on and on how wonderful this man and how great he treats her and her son. They kept wanting me to meet him. I've had a hard life and met many people in my day. My grandmother used to say, if you never met evil, consider yourself lucky. You will meet lots of people in life and always trust your gut. If you ever meet evil, you will know it. I never understood what she meant until the day I met this man. My best friend's sister stopped by her other sister house where we happened to be. They called me to come say hello and to meet the new boyfriend. When I came, they introduced him, and I shook his hand. I will try and describe the feeling as best I can. The moment I shook this man's hand and looked into his eyes, I felt almost sick. A rush of dread and panic, and the feeling of urgency to get away from him all at once. His smile and words and overt friendliness did not match the black, cold eyes staring at me. He said very little about himself, no matter the questions I asked. He deflected and answered a question with a question. After he left, my bestie asked what I thought. I replied with, "Do you really want to know?" I said, "He seems nice, almost too nice and perfect. In fact, if you really want to know, something is off, and I feel like I just met the devil in disguise. She needs to get away from him because that is no man, he's a monster." My friend was like, "You got all that from just meeting him?" I assured her it's just my opinion, and I can't explain why my gut just said this man is evil. 2 months later, that man murdered her 8-month-old child. He was angry at my friend's sister for taking her son to his dad and getting Xmas pictures taken with her ex and his family for their Xmas card. He was angry that the baby's grandmother asked her to be in one of the pictures with the family. He killed an 8-month-old child to hurt her because he was jealous of the relationship she had with her son and because she co-parented. That is all for today, my friends. Thank you so much for listening to my video, and if you want to listen to more stories, do check out my other videos. I post videos twice or more a week, and if you want to support me, you can check out my Patreon. It is free, and you can join a membership if you choose. The Patreon is created for a special reason, and you can check the reason out by visiting my Patreon from the link below. Do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, as it really helps. Have an amazing day, my friend, and I will see you on the next one.